Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Penny Wright, and we are delighted to have a return visit from Pat DelGiorno, who has spoken at the library many times about women and their roles in World War II, and she is one of our favorite speakers. So Pat, thank you very much for being here today. I want to thank Pat Slawinski, who I think you can see, for being our Zoom expert here. And so we're happy to have both Pats here. Patricia DelGiorno has made an extensive study of women's roles in World War II and has participated in World War II studies at Cambridge and Oxford universities. In 2013, she completed a master's thesis entitled Women's Secret Agents in World War II. And as some of you know, she lectures and gives presentations on all these related topics, including women war correspondents, women pilots, and many other original topics. So we'll go ahead and get started. Pat, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, Penny. I'm always glad to be back at Southampton Library, even remotely. So today we're going to talk about a cultural icon, Rosie the Riveter. She symbolizes the millions of American women who went to war, manned the home front, excuse me, when the men went off to war. After the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, almost every able-bodied man joined the military. Workers were needed to fill the jobs that the men left, and they were also needed to staff the shipyards, the aircraft factories, the munitions plants that made the armamentarium for the war. And to meet those needs, the United States government enlisted the help of Madison Avenue, the ad agencies, to launch a full-bore campaign to encourage women to join the workforce. That recruitment campaign included posters, we see that on your right of your screen, do the job he left, magazines, newspapers, newsreels, radio. They also enlisted the aid of musicians and artists. And I'm going to play for you in a minute a musical persuader. This song that you're about to hear is called Rosie's Song, and it's the first time that the term Rosie the Riveter is used. The title wasn't based on a real person, but it was a catchy phrase. It was alliterative. It was a catchy phrase for a catchy tune. And it was played everywhere in the 1940s. It was a huge hit, played in radio, jukeboxes, if anybody remembers those, in restaurants, in train and bus stations. So here is that song.
All the day long, when the rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie, the Riveter, keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage, sitting up there on the fuselage. That little friend can do more than a man can do. Rosie, the Riveter. Rosie's got a boyfriend, Charlie. Charlie, he's a Marine. Rosie is protecting Charlie, working overtime on the riveting machine. When they gave her a production lead, she was as proud as a girl could be. There's something true about red, white, and blue about Rosie, the Riveter. Rosie, the Riveter. Rosie, 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 working on assembly line. Bubble day, bubble day, bubble deep, deep, leave us on bubble day. Repeat boy, repeat boy, repeat. Rosie, 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 the riveter on the assembly line. That's all.
And when the war was over, yes, indeed, back to the kitchen. In order to encourage women to join the workforce, Norman Rockwell, the artist, he created a painting which was used as the cover for Saturday Evening Post. And here you see this image of a powerful woman. She's a really huge, big, strong, muscular woman. She exudes confidence and competence. Her muscular arms rest on her lunchbox. You can see Rosie on the lunchbox. And across her lap, she's holding this enormous riveting gun. But she's still feminine because you can see she's wearing makeup. She has lipstick on, and she has what we used to call rouge on her cheeks. And she has, if you can just see it on your screen, peeking out of her overall pocket is a white lace handkerchief. So she maintains her femininity at the same time she exudes this power, tremendous woman power. Okay, Rockwell used two models for his Rosie. And the first model was Michelangelo's Isaiah, which was painted on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. When it's set next to Rockwell's Rosie, we see that the body, the posture and attitude of the figures is really exactly the same. The differences are in the face and in the clothing. And in the Isaiah image, another difference is the hand of Isaiah is open like this, but Rockwell had a little sense of humor, and he inserted a ham sandwich into Rosie's hand. The second model for Rosie's face was a young girl named Mary Doyle. She was a petite 19-year-old telephone operator who lived near Rockwell in Arlington, Vermont. And he used her pretty face to sit atop the Isaiah figure. Rockwell later on, he apologized to Mary Doyle for making such an exaggerated version of her. And he told her that he really needed to portray a powerful woman, to convey the message that women could do anything. Mary said that people in her hometown, they didn't make much of a fuss about the cover, except one fellow, they teased her about Rosie's big arms. And he said that maybe the model for Rosie's arms was actually Jack Dempsey. And Jack Dempsey, for those of you who may remember, or those who don't, was actually a heavyweight boxer at the time. So Rockwell painted Mary's face from photographs. He had a photographer take 2 photographs of Mary and at 2 sessions, and she was paid $5 for each session. Obviously, the grand total of $10. Well, the Rosie painting became Rockwell's most famous work. And it's worth noting that in 2009, the original Rockwell painting was sold for $4.9 million to Alice Walton. She's the daughter of Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. So between the Rosie song and Rockwell's illustration, Rosie the Riveter became the catchphrase and the symbol for all American women who went to work in World War II. So Rosie became the home front equivalent of the military's G.I. Joe. Okay, the We Can Do It poster. Contrary to popular opinion, this poster doesn't bear the name Rosie the Riveter. The first rendering of this poster, the We Can Do It poster, was created by a man called Howard Miller of the Westinghouse Company. He created this as a part of a series of posters that Westinghouse used to motivate their employees for the war effort, and it was in no way associated with Rosie. At first, these posters, the We Can Do It posters, were displayed almost exclusively at Westinghouse and their plants. It wasn't until decades later that it was used to promote women's rights and women power. Both Sarah Palin and Hillary Clinton used it in their political campaigns. And in recent years, the image has been commercialized. You can find it everywhere on coffee cups, t-shirts, placemats, aprons, and I even have a pair of socks with Rosie the Riveter on them. So there we are. We can do it. Not until the 70s was it used to promote women's rights. Naomi Parker Fraley, she was the inspiration for the We Can Do It poster. Here she is here on the left. She was a lathe operator at the Alameda war plant. And here we see her at the lathe in these two shots. And somehow the creator of the image found this was an anonymous picture that wasn't named, but he used it as an image for the model of the We Can Do It poster. Naomi Parker, who didn't discover that her picture was the model for We Can Do It until she saw her factory picture at a Rosie reunion in the 2000s. Until then, the Rosie image was thought to be of another woman. But the mix-up was straightened out. But when Naomi realized that it was her, it wasn't until she was in her 90s. She said she didn't want fame or fortune. She just wanted her identity back. Another note, when she was hired at the Alameda plant, they told her she had to wrap up her hair. She said she and her sister Ada went down to the 5 and 10, and they bought the red and white polka bandana, which has become an icon ever since. Okay, the next series of slides and promotions were designed by the government to appeal to women's patriotism. We can't win without them. They touted women's tremendous value to the war effort and urged them to go to work. Here is another post cover that Norman Rockwell painted. That appeared some 3 months after the first cover. This second cover is called Rosie to the Rescue, and it promotes the idea that everyday civilian jobs were vital too, not just defense work and plants. This Rosie is depicted as a jack of all trades. She's wearing a nurse's cap, she's carrying a hoe, and she's got a watering can for gardening, and all manner of other tools, including milk bottles. So she's shown as being able to do it all, coming to the rescue of America at home, as well as making arms for the front lines of battle. Rockwell and the Saturday Evening Post were part of a much bigger campaign to move women into the workplace. About 125 million advertisements were produced as posters and full-page magazine ads. Okay, here's this gal saying, I found the job where I fit best. Find your war job in industry, agriculture, and business. So you can find any kind of work you want, where you think you'll do best. This wooing of the American woman, while completely understandable and absolutely essential, is also a bit ironic. Until the war, married women were largely restricted to the home, tending their children and the households. Some states and local governments even banned women, married women, from working. And even if it wasn't banned by law, many employers refused to hire married women. With few exceptions, even unmarried women were barred from jobs and professions that paid well and that had status. But as the armed forces filled its ranks with manpower, industry had to fill its ranks with women power. Okay, here we have a KitchenAid. One ad asked, can you use an electric mixer? If so, you can use an electric drill. FDR realized that in order to win the war, it was essential to mobilize the full citizenry, regardless of race, nationality, or gender. So on June 25th, 1941, he signed an order that prohibited racial discrimination in the defense industry and promoted equal employment opportunity for all races. Here's a photo of Mexican-American women workers on the Southern Pacific Railroad. As the war progressed, there were great migrations of people. Americans were on the move. They were going to military installations or to areas of the country with war plants. Populations soared in boom cities like Seattle, Detroit, Mobile, Buffalo. Shipyards and aircraft plants in California attracted as many as 14 million people. Production was the name of the game, as the war demanded more planes, more ships, more munitions. American industry demanded more and more women workers. Here we see a bucker and a riveter on the, I think that's a wing of a plane. There were challenges for working women, especially mothers. At Eleanor Roosevelt's urging, FDR approved the first U.S. government child care facilities. They built 7 centers to service 105,000 children. Industry leaders were also urged to build model child care facilities for their own workers. But these efforts didn't meet the full need for child care for women working mothers. They had to rely on family and other arrangements to care for their children. Dangerous hair. Safety was a primary essential in these plants. This is actress Veronica Lake. She was a star of the 1940s, and she demonstrates what can happen when hair isn't contained in the workplace. Plant safety regulations required women to wear their hair up and back. And hence, in almost all photographs that you see of working women during this period, they're wearing turbans or scarves, just as the gals who worked at the Alameda plant had to go out and buy herself a bandana to bind up her hair. Here, in August 1943, Life magazine featured Margaret Bourke-White's photo essay of women steel workers. And here we see Ann Zurich. She was a 23-year-old flame burner in the armor plates division. A lot of these jobs were very dangerous, but the women did them. Mars making bombs everywhere. Single and married women, mothers, daughters, grandmothers were working. And here we have a working woman in the midst of the bombs that the women workers at her plant were creating. Okay, this is a gal sitting on the wing of a plane. And she says, when I took this job, my mother warned me, you'll never be the same. And she was right. I never was. At Boeing, I found a freedom and an independence that I had never known. And I wasn't about to give up. Here we have a glamorous Rosie. I wonder how many of you recognize her. Probably most of you. I'll reveal her identity in a minute. This is Norma Jean on the assembly line. Oh, sorry. Yep. In the summer of 1945, Captain Ronald Reagan of the Army's Motion Picture Unit sent a 26-year-old photographer named David Conover to the radio plane plant to shoot some pictures of pretty girls working on the assembly line. He was snapping pictures and he took one of Norma Jean. She was putting on propellers. He walked on and then he stopped. He was really struck by her beauty. He stopped to chat, and when she confided that she really wanted to be an actress, he advised her to become a model first, and he said he'd help her. He took shots of her for the next 2 weeks, and he coached her on how to pose, how to address the camera, and he helped her put a portfolio together. And then he was sent off to the war in the Philippines. Norma Jean, whose husband was a merchant marine and he was at sea, she promptly moved out of her mother-in-law's house where she was staying. She divorced her husband and she changed her name to Marilyn Monroe, and the rest is history. There's a PS to this story. After the war, Monroe's ex-husband joined the LA Police Department, and in 1950, he was one of the officers who held back the crowd at the premiere of Monroe's movie, The Asphalt Jungle. So, a bit of serendipity. And a further bit of serendipity, Conover, the photographer who took her first pictures, he met Monroe again in 1956 on the set of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and Monroe credited him with discovering her. So this is from Newsweek in 1943. They're in the shipyards, lumber mills, steel mills, foundries. They're electricians and mechanics and boilermakers. They operate streetcars, buses, cranes, and tractors. Women engineers are working in the drafting rooms, and women physicists and chemists in the great industrial laboratories. And here we see a powerful woman with this big machine. Here's some stats. 6 million women worked in the factories. 350,000 women joined female branches of the military, and 3 million joined the Red Cross. Time magazine called America's wartime production a miracle. So now I have a film clip that includes some interviews with the Rosies, or a few of the Rosies, taken some, I don't know, decades later, but I think you'll find it interesting when they talk about their experience going into these plants for the first time.
I ran in the house and I told Dad, I said, Dad, we're at war. And I said, the Japanese had found Pearl Harbor. The next morning, I think all the boys enlisted. My dad wasn't happy with it. He thought that was not employment for a female. Some of the fellows that worked there asked me if I got paid for being a contortionist. I was Rosie the Riveter. On December 7th, 1941, I was in the theater, and all of a sudden I heard a lot of hustle and bustle out in front of the theater and noise. So I thought, well, maybe I should go out there and see what's happening. I thought maybe somebody was fighting or, someone got hurt. I ran in the house and I told Dad, I said, Dad, we're at war. And I I said, the Japanese that found Pearl Harbor. Next morning, I think all the boys enlisted from our high school. Just about all of them. Well, I can hear my mother saying, there go my boys. My brother said, want you and mother to go tomorrow early to Ford's in Dearborn. And he said, they're going to hire the first 100 women to work in the assembly line. At one time, I was working for Hans Wesson, and I heard that they needed help at Douglas. My cousin took me down to Douglas, and I got a job down there. And I worked on the B-17 bombers. I was inside the plane. We worked on the where the turret gun was, you know, with the gun that went out the window. That's what I worked on. I worked at Cessna, and I worked at this other plant where we made glider parts. And they had a shop where all those things were made in a jig, and you had to glue the little things together. And they made parts that went into wings to hold them together. I was on an assembly line. What I was to do was to put them in this huge machine, should we say, that was in front of me. And then I would get my arm and bring down this, it looked like a drill. It wasn't a drill. We got a bolt. They told me that the aircraft was for the aircrafts, the planes. I was very small, and I had to work in the wing of the C-47. So my girlfriend, one time she did the riveting, and the next time I did riveting. And we did the bucker and riveting. So a lot of the time I was a bucker. You know, you hold the bar, and she would rivet from this side, and I was inside the wing and did the bucking on the inside. From there, I went to work on the 826. I worked on a bench where I filed bearings, and their burrs got in the sides there, and they had to all be filed out because if they weren't, it would blow the engine. And the engines that we had were the Pratt Whitney. My dad wasn't happy with it. He thought that was not employment for a female, and he was afraid there would be too many males there. So I told him, I said, the males are in the service. They wouldn't be there, you know. We got used to our jumpsuits because we get teased about them too because of the flaps in the back. So I guess we did look funny. We all wore jeans naturally, you know. We would put on our glasses, and we always had to make sure that our hair was pulled back. The first day I walked in the building, and all of a sudden something hit me in the rear, and it was one of them big black rubber bands. Boy, somebody had really let me have it. That happened 2 or 3 times, and then finally the boss said, this is going to stop. We're not going to do this. He said, these people are here. And he said, they're in the war effort just like everybody else. They really didn't like us too good at first, but they got over it. It was dangerous, I would say. We had to wear glasses, you know, those big goggles. I had to just get in as small as I could in order to get in the wing. Some of the fellows that worked there asked me if I got paid for being a contortionist. They thought I should. Yeah, my girlfriend was a real tall redhead, and she'd be up on the jig, and I'd see all that group from they'd be dressed, the boys would be dressed in their camouflage, and they'd be coming down the aisle, and she didn't know it, and I'd stick my head out the window where you put the gun, you know, and I'd be a big whistle, and I'd jump down in the plane, and there she was sitting up there, and they thought it was her. We had a lot of fun. My mind was on the war all the time, all the time. They were in the war, and then when those planes would get, you know, crippled, they'd bring them in to be patched up because they had holes in them, and then you'd have to patch them. Just like you would a piece of cloth, you'd cut a square piece of aluminum, and then you'd rivet all around that square piece, and that would be your patch. And they called them flying coffins, and that was bad. We didn't like that. We didn't like that. I said, no, that's just not a good feeling, you know, to think that plane might crash. It was exciting, and we were happy to be doing what we were doing. We were helping, and that meant a lot.
Isn't it pretty hot for you, Miss Blaine?
Well, I hear it gets kind of hot around the kitchen stove, too.
I never thought of that.
Yes, and it gets pretty hot out there in the South Pacific. I was glad I was there. I was always in a hurry to get there. I felt very proud because everyone working there was doing the same thing for the same purpose. So one went to Iwo Jima, he was the Marine, and one was in the invasion of Normandy. So I had both of those gentlemen killed. They were both, yeah, both killed. And that was very sad. Well, the two brothers were born in the Chapman Ranch. And there was Dr. Wickett that was a friend of the family. Well, my older brother was a paratrooper. He was wounded in the Battle of the Bulge, and Dr. Wickett was the one that took care of my brother and had him released so that they could bring him closer to home so we could take care of him. My fiance was overseas. He was overseas and sent me a telegram that they were coming home. And he got home on October the 27th, 1945. And then we got married November the 11th, 1945. And we were married 59 years. We knew the war was going to be over because they quit making the planes. Well, they started announcing it. I lived on Commonwealth right here in Fullerton. Everybody started screaming, run out the doors and everything. Everybody was celebrating like crazy, kissing everybody. I know a lot of people kissed me and I kissed them. It was really a thrill, a big thrill in that one. So I was so excited. All of us were. Everybody jumped up and down. Everybody was hugging everybody, whether you knew them or not. That was a long time ago, but you know, you don't forget the beginning and you don't forget the end. It was an experience. It really was one that I wish that would have never happened, but it did. I went to Arizona to see my granddaughter about 12 years ago, and I'm walking, I don't know if it was going to get my suitcase or going out. There was this big glass-in room, and it had doors on it. There was one couple in there, and I stopped and looked, and I saw all of these engines, and there was a Pratt Whitney one just staring me in the face. And I opened the door, I ran right up to it, and then I felt kind of foolish because I thought, what's the matter with her? But I wanted to touch it. I'm glad that I worked at the Ford aircraft plant. I really am. That was a wonderful experience for me. I don't think I'll ever have another experience like that in my whole life.
I found that a tremendously moving clip, hearing from these gals who worked on these engines and planes all these years later, and how much it meant to them. And even in their, excuse me, their remembrance of it, how moved they still are, about what they participated in and what they contributed to. I have another film clip to show you now.
San
Diego, and they advertised for women if they would like to come to work because the men were going to war. And I applied at Roar Aircraft in Chula Vista, and they hired all the women that came there. Other women came from other states to work when they heard about it, because first time women had that type of job. My mother and my stepdad, and they all thought it was a very exciting thing. My sister and I went to work. I had a sister living in San Francisco. She became a welder on a ship. And my sister and I were riveters. The men taught us how the tools and riveting and all that. But we had to have some men there to show us work that we had never done. And it didn't take us long to catch on. We could see that the men's job wasn't as hard as they made us think it was. And we all did it. That's why we're going like that, because we all did it. And it didn't take us long to learn. And because we got cooperations from the men, at first they were kind of dubious about having women come in and do their jobs. But after they learned that we were ready to be experienced and cooperating in everything they wanted us to do, it worked out great. We all got along great. We worked on bigger parts, like the nose of the plane or the fuselage of the plane, connecting parts and even wiring. And sometimes they want us to work overtime if they had a schedule to meet to get the plane out in time, to send the parts over to put on the big plane. It's a challenge. Women want to be challenged, and which we have been, and look what it's brought. We get congratulations from all these women that are CEOs and presidents of corporations that we paved the way. So proud of that fact. I never realized till now. I didn't realize how important it was then, because it was just something we were doing. We knew how important it was in a way, because we knew we had to win the war. We had to win that war. So that's why we kept busy and kept working at it. But we didn't know how important it was, and being special doing it as women. I worked in the office. I didn't like that because I wasn't moving around enough. So I started doing car hopping, putting food to the car, put it on the windshield. They put us on skates, and then I got out of that. I know I did fall down and everything. So I did that for quite a while. So from 1945 to 51, I did other things. So then in 51, I worked at Ryan Aeronautical for 14 years, and they built a Spirit of St. Louis for Charles Lindbergh. And then in 1964, they laid us off because they stopped building airplanes. So about a year I didn't work, and somebody I knew came up here to Long Beach, and she said, "We better get up here because Douglas is hiring women for the first time since the war." Got hired just like that when they found out we had worked at Ryan. And they promised me 10 years of work. I've been there 49. I have to tell some guys sometimes, there's a rivet gun about this big, and when I grab it and go to use it, one of the guys went and told the boss, "She's using that big rivet gun." I said, "I've been using this rivet gun before you were born." I said, "I'm not as frail as I look. I'm strong." I had to tell them that. You got to fight your way with men, you know. The guys would say, "You're working too fast. You're making us look bad." I said, "Well, keep working then." They wondered where I get my energy, which I still have. One time my sister, not too long ago, she said, "Are you ever going to retire? And gee, what are you going to do? Work till you're 95? Little did I know. I just got smarter. I said, "Maybe." Little did I know. It's amazing that I lived this long, and I was aware and seeing the differences, and I'm proud of that. Years ago, we couldn't get certain jobs. If you wanted to get credit, you couldn't even get credit. And so many things have changed, and the women, and if we had a part of it, I am so happy.
That was a great Rosie. And she continued, and she spoke and attended Rosie the Riveter rallies all over the country and well into her 90s. Okay, next up is a gal called May Cryer. May was a 17-year-old girl who moved from North Dakota to work in the Boeing plant in Seattle, Washington. Throughout the war, she riveted wings of the B-17 Fortress plane. She so enjoyed her work that a coworker said she's having a love affair with the plane. In fact, May helped celebrate the 5,000th Boeing B-17. And she said the biggest thrill was when the B-17s rolled off the assembly line. You can't believe the feeling that we had. We did it. I really loved this magnificent aircraft. And to celebrate the manufacture of their 5,000th B-17, Boeing named the plane $5 grand and invited workers from all the ships that had worked on that particular 5,000th B-17 to sign their names on the plane. And here you see in this photograph, you see all these workers and 5,000, and you can barely see, you know, the inscriptions on the plane. Here it is again on the nose of the plane. So after the war, Rosie Memorial Park was created in Richmond, California. And on October 14th, 2000, a Rosie the Riveter memorial was dedicated on San Francisco Bay, the site of Kaiser and some 70 other shipbuilding yards where the Liberty ships were built. The sculpture shown is part of a ship's hull, and it was under construction. And fittingly, the sculpture was designed by 2 women. This slide shows the hull and a granite walkway which was created and that stretched the length of a Liberty ship from the hull to the water's edge. Etched into the granite walkway are words from the women workers and a timeline of the events of the period. This is one piece. Let me tell you this. I was 23. I never had a job. My husband was an electrician. I told him, I'm going to go to work too. He said, no, you're not. Well, that same afternoon, I went down to the hiring hall. Another piece. A chaperone was hired to escort us to our workplace and herd us to the bathroom and lunch. They didn't know how the men would react, but soon there were just too many of us. My mother-in-law had already started her family during the war, so she took a job in the Maritime Child Care Center, where they had shifts of children coming in. After the war, the daycare ladies brought in the union. They started Local 1. And this is an inscription on a Rosie memorial. You must tell your children, putting modesty aside, that without us, without women, there would have been no spring in 1945. At the end of the war, they gave the men parades. They gave the women pink slips. That's what May Cryer had to say. She said, as you saw in the Rosie song clip, the women did indeed go back to the kitchen. They were sent back to the kitchen. In the last couple of decades, there's been a surge of films, books about World War II, the greatest generation. It remembers and honors the great sacrifice and courage displayed in World War II. So May Cryer began thinking, well, there should be some acknowledgement of the Rosies. She started writing to congressmen, to senators, to veterans associations, and she was pushing for a Rosie the Riveter's Memorial Day. Well, she was largely ignored for many, many years, until a local newspaper in Levittown, Pennsylvania, picked up her story, and they promoted it. Well, in 2017, she was finally successful. March 21st, 2017 was designated as National Rosie the Riveter Day. The date was particularly apt because March is the official Woman's Year of the Woman. Month of the Woman. This was a one-time thing. They only did it in 2017, but May continues to push for it to be observed every year. Next, we have a clip marking the 70th year since the end of World War II.
Come on, ladies, show me your gun. I'm near Mr. Shane. Please let me explain. I'm near Mr. Shane. Means you're great.
This event today was really focused on trying to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. The effort that women made here was phenomenal.
We're here to make history. My name is Rhonda Fortier-Bourne. I'm from Richmond, California, and I'm just happy to be here representing African-American Rosie, the Riveters.
We had over 1,000 women show up and put on the uniforms, and just everybody was just so happy to be a part of it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All the day long, where the rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie, the Riveter, keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage, sitting up there on the fuselage. That little friend can do more than a man can do. Rosie.
I got to meet the real Rosies, you know, not just from the textbooks. That to me is worth more than winning any record.
Working overtime on the riveting machine.
During World War II, I was a welder. We built Liberty ships and Victory ships. We had equal pay for equal work. Ladies, just keep your eye on the goal, don't be discouraged, and help one another.
Rosie, 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 the riveter on the assembly line.
Well, wasn't that fun? That was a great clip. They looked like they had just a wonderful time. So, in all of the research about the women workers, the interviews, the women all spoke about how happy they were doing the work, how proud they were to be contributing to the war effort, to be serving their country and supporting the men fighting at the front. They were happy because they realized what they could do. They took jobs no one thought women could do. They not only did them, they excelled at them. They were earning their own money. What a thrill that was. Good money for the time. And they were making their own decisions, many of them probably for the first time in their lives. They discovered a new sense of pride, dignity, independence in their work and in their lives, most importantly. They were also happy because they realized what they could do. They took jobs, as I said, no one thought a woman could do. And as Eleanor Otto observed, they helped pave the way for the women high flyers of today, the astronauts, the CEOs, the scientists, the pilots. And one day soon, it will come. We'll really smash through that glass ceiling and elect a woman president. And I'm sure many of you, look forward to that day. Thank you very much for joining with me for this Rosie presentation. And now if there are any questions, I'm sure that
Yeah, Pat, I think we have at least one question.
We do. Diana?
I wanted to ask you something before we started with the questions, which is that it occurs to me that many men were able to continue or complete or start their post-secondary education after World War II by with the GI Bill, was there anything in place whatsoever for all of these women who had contributed in their own way as as the men had?
No, there wasn't. And in fact, I have given a presentation at Southampton or at the Rogers Memorial Library about the women Air Force service pilots who took over domestic flying in the United States when the men served as pilots in war. And they flew every type of aircraft that the Air Force had at the time. They trained other pilots. They test piloted. They did an extraordinary job. And they were considered, they were supposed to be made veterans and given a pension and whatnot. That never happened. And then returning men fought against their being recognized as such. And it wasn't until, I think, the 1990s when they finally were recognized, and they received a gold medal, and then benefits were given to them. That nobody even knew what they had done. Their records were sealed. It was a terrible thing that happened. So no, to answer your question, neither the Rosies nor the pilots who did, real war work were ever recognized until recently.
Now, I see we have that Diana Conlon raised her hand.
Diana, I'll allow you to talk so you can ask your question. Okay, go ahead.
Diana is muted.
I can do that. Okay, Diana, if you can unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
I'm sorry, ladies. I guess I clicked the wrong icon.
You're okay. You're all set to go now. We can hear you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this topic. It doesn't get much attention. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the comment, and we agree. We have a woman who does original research and brings it straight to us. So thank you for your comment.
You're welcome.
We have another raised hand. Yes, we do.
Okay. Eileen, I'm going to allow you to talk. You just have to unmute yourself. Okay, Eileen, you just need to unmute yourself so we can hear your question or comment.
Okay, sorry. For some reason, there's no microphone icon on my screen. I had to go through a couple of things to get it. I just wanted to say, Pat always does a good presentation, but I think this was the best yet. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. The film clips were phenomenal. And I just wanted to mention for anyone who never saw a series on, I believe, ABC called Homefront, about what was going on in a small town in Ohio during the war. And the mother of the family, who is a widow, and her daughter both work in a factory, and they both get laid off at the end of the war. And the mother, when she says, "But wait, I'm the head of household," she's told, "Well, go marry some man. We don't need you." So,
Yeah.
I mean, she comes back into the house and she's got her hair tied up and everything, and she's in tears because she can't believe that they laid her off in that incredibly unfeeling fashion. It's just hard to believe that women were told that their work was so vital, and then they were told, "No, you're worthless, go away."
Yep, that's so true.
Pat, I just want to mention that David Alperin wrote a note to all of us that the Rosie song was written by Red Evans and John Jacob Loeb, recorded by numerous artists, including the popular big band leader, Kay Kaiser. You probably knew that, Pat, but anyway, thank you, David.
We also have a comment from Jess P. saying a tremendous presentation, Pat.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I enjoyed, I love the Rosies. My mother was a Rosie. That's
What?
very, and in Nassau County, yes. Of course, at the time, I didn't realize the import of that, but today I do.
Right.
You know, one of the things that we are seeing now that, you know, women's work has been, and contributions to a variety of enterprises, has been so largely underplayed, underwritten about. I think it's starting now for the first time to really, we're getting into what women have done through the ages in a way that we never did before. And it never ceases to amaze me when I do research on various of the women's work during World War II and in other venues, how wonderful they were and how scanty the writing about them is. You have to really dig. So anyway, I had a lot of fun with it.
Pat, I want to mention to the people in the audience, some of you may know this, but we have an oral history series at the library. Over the years, quite a few interviews have been entered into that. You can go to our website and find it, but we have, you know, nurses in World War II, life on the home front in World War II, pilots in World War II, they were men. Also another one of men in World War II. These were really interesting oral histories, and most of the people who I interviewed are no longer alive. Just one other comment, which is that my mother was in the Red Cross in World War II, and I deeply regret not having had more curiosity about. My father was a doctor or surgeon in World War II, and that's how they met. And I didn't ask as many questions. I didn't ask many questions when they were alive.
Okay, we do have one more question from Just P. Okay. You just unmute. There you go. All set.
Hi, this is Jess. Pat, I am so excited to see you, Pat. Yay!
Hi, Jess. How are you?
This is on a really personal note, so I'm so sorry for everyone. I have known Pat a long time, and earlier in my career, Pat was such a leader and someone that I really always looked to as an advocate of women. And following her own successful career, I just have been so inspired by the way that Pat remains so sharp and spends the time that she does doing the research that she does to bring us this incredible information that's so inspiring. And I think it's inspiring for people at all ages, really, and I'm inspired by it personally, to think about how to really live a rich life. You know, careers will, you know, they're rich and then they may sort of come to a close as we think of it, but Pat's kind of moved on to phase 2, and it's just so inspiring. And I just want to say thanks, Pat, and I'm just so glad to have the opportunity to dial into this because I can't get out to Long Island so easily. So this is so great. And thanks everyone that made it happen. So awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Can Jess hear me? Can Jess hear me or anybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I thank you so much, Jess. I love you, and it's great to hear you. And I'll be in touch.
Love you too. Love you too. Thanks, everybody. Okay.
Thank you, Jess, for those wonderful comments. And I think we all agree that we are the lucky beneficiaries of Pat's tremendous, you know, intelligence, work ethic, dedication, and Pat, we are very, very grateful to you. I see David Alpern wrote in applause, applause. And I think we would all agree we don't want you to stop because you know, we're just so lucky to have you in our lives. So thank you, Pat. I think maybe with that, we will look forward to the next time. Notice I said that. And thank you all for coming. And
thank you, Penny, and thank you, Pat, and thank you, Rogers Memorial Library in Southampton. And you're incredible folks. And I just have so benefited from my association with you and look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.